Good morning.
There he is. Steve Z, the man.
How are we doing?
Great. How are you?
I am well. I am well. Can't complain, man. I broke out this mug
Oh,
for
throwback.
I figured it was very fitting. The 2018 kickoff where that lovely company we both know well places on our desks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fair warning. We're live right now. Sales Coaching Uncut. So everything you say can and will be held against you in the court of public opinion.
As you know, I might be someone who needs that disclaimer, so I appreciate that.
Where are you dialing in from? Looks like you're home.
Yeah, I'm in Seaport, so in Boston.
All right. I was just
Yeah.
down there last weekend, man. There was some festival across the street from your house. Took the kids. It's amazing
Oh,
down there.
nice. Yeah, it's crazy. I look out, I face south, so dude, I'm lucky, man. It's a great setup. It's cool being in the action. As you know, I mean, you've been in Boston area a while, right? It's crazy how much it's changed.
Yeah. Oh, especially that neighborhood. Do you
Yeah.
get to an office or do you work 100% from home?
So we have, and I'm sure we'll get into all that. Yeah, we have offices across the globe. We have the closest one for me is New York.
All right.
So I usually go down to New York, I would say usually at least monthly.
All right.
And then I'm traveling. It comes in kind of in waves, but for different deals and stuff like that I'm involved in. So it's funny. I think back to like the run we had in the office, and I'm so grateful for that. And we'll probably talk about a lot of that today of just like the habits it teaches you and stuff, right? And just things
Yeah.
that no matter how much tech advances, you cannot teach. Um, but now at this point in my life, in my position and whatnot, I love remote work. Like I really like it. And I have phases where I'm like, I miss the office, and that's okay. I'll shoot down in New York.
Yeah.
So it's a nice balance.
So what do you like about it better? See, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I'd much rather be in an office. Um,
Uh, yeah, and when I say, maybe that's strong. I don't know if I necessarily, you're right. I mean, there's things I certainly have my days where I'm like, man, I miss the office. So think about month end, quarter end, team meetings are just, it's hard to rally the troops on
yeah.
a Zoom, no matter how charismatic one might be, right?
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to my ability to just get to GSD,
Yeah.
right? Get shit done, that's just I just no distractions, and I'm able to just zone in. But yeah, as far as the team stuff and whatnot, sure. I mean, I'd prefer an office every day of my life if I could.
Yeah. I mean, productivity wise, and I got three kids running around, so being able to be flexible and get to the schools and the practices and kid is sick, I'm here, like all of that works. And no commute. Flip the laptop open and you're there.
Yeah.
I find I work a ton more now though. A ton more.
I went through that. The pandemic was a weird time. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. I still think people are just forgetting that happened. And I
Yeah.
remind myself and frankly anyone who's in my circle, like, don't forget about that. Like that
Yeah.
was something we need to always remember actually happened. And like the
Yeah.
world did shut down, and all of us mentally face challenges, and like that's
Yeah.
real. That's okay. But on a serious note, yeah, with the pandemic, during that time, I found myself working more than I ever have in my life. I
Yeah.
almost think it was also an outlet for me mentally to just try to hide like how I was potentially feeling at times, or just being so, just not having anything to do. So I'm like, well, I might as well just work. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that also through that, I've learned to try to help balance the importance of like, you do have to shut your laptop, and I try to
Yeah.
almost do the in-office thing at home. So like tonight when I'm done, usually around, I mean, it varies, right? But whatever, 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'll shut the laptop, and I really try to make sure I'm not doing anything. I have some West Coast people on my team. They know they can ping me. I always say my Slack's always open. Doesn't mean I'll
Yeah.
respond, right? And then
Yeah.
if it's urgent, text me. But anyways, I feel that. I think we all can get caught up just working almost nonstop.
Yeah. I get a wife that's pretty good about getting on me about it too, obviously with the kids and helping out there. But she was just telling me the other day, she's like, you know, when we met, you like had hobbies and friends and you like did other stuff and you don't do any of that shit anymore. It's like, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't have
I
hobbies.
mean, hey, you
I
are
have
like
to-
you're CEO of a startup, right? I mean,
it is more demanding. Yeah, that's fair. But then she's great. She should have been a lawyer. She's in product design. She should have absolutely been an attorney because I'll say that and she'll come back to me like, well, I can show you studies that show top executives and CEOs who have hobbies, who do other things, who disconnect, are far more productive. And she'll send over all these articles all the time, reinforcing her like, Jesus Christ, you're great.
You should let me see what it's called. So I joined the Harvard Business Review has this like annual subscription thing. It's like, I don't know. I would recommend this to anyone who sees this. It's like $150 a year. And it's all HBR type content. You get like 4 or 5 magazines a year. I think it's once a quarter. But I've actually found it to be really helpful for not just my own leadership development, but also they just talk a lot about balance and the studies behind it. Like I'm
Yeah,
like you, I don't, when someone says something to me, unless there's some like, okay, well, what's the proof or the research behind it?
yeah,
And you're right. I think we need outlets. You need
yeah,
things that, I think you and I have both always been grinders.
yeah,
Like no doubt. I remember grinding with you back in the day in the good old Shark Tank.
yeah.
But at the same time, I think a lot of it's just maturity too, right? And this is why people should seek mentors that are early on in their career. You learn like you got to make sure you have something else that's firing you up and getting you going, and frankly, just to empty the tank.
Yeah, and the grind is part of it for sure. And this I always struggle with is leading teams where yeah, part of it is just a fucking numbers game. It's like you got to put the dials in, you got to put the hours in, you got to put the time in. It's such an unsexy way to lead, but it's true, you know? It's like, if you want to hit home runs, do you want one at bat, two at bat, 10 at bats? Like how many do you want to hit one over the yard? And a
Dude,
lot of that is just putting the hours in.
I think leadership, and I don't even think this is a hot take. I think sales leadership is more important than it's ever been in 2024 and beyond. Like I really do. And I simplify that by saying I think there's two pieces to this. There's the technology element where salespeople walk into a tech company that gives them all these tools, AI. Wow, I don't even have to write emails anymore, right? So there's element of tech is great when used correctly.
Yeah.
However, fundamentals, and this is like just will always be how I lead. Like I'm just big on fundamentals, right? The simple things, and we'll get into that. The second
Yeah.
component is these people that are in their 20s, like Gen Z, really. While they're all bright and there's no doubt there's a lot of talent out there. And please, if you're interested in a job, ping me. But no, on a serious note, it's like if you never experienced an office, which they just weren't able to, a lot of these people, because so many
Yeah.
companies are now hybrid or just remote. Uh, I think, man, really, like, as I think about my own development and what allowed me to have a decent run so far in my career is like so much of that office time, those random conversations. I remember having beers with you in the HubSpot kitchen,
Yeah.
and like sometimes it was just to shoot the shit, but other times we actually ended up getting to some stuff. And I'm like, wow, that was a cool conversation. Like I'm walking away with something from that. So it's scary, man. I think if you're a leader who there's good and bad of everything, right? There's good doctors, there's bad doctors, there's good cops, there's bad cops, right? Like I always like to make that analogy. There's good salespeople, there's bad, there's great sales leaders, there's terrible sales leaders. I think unfortunately there are more leaders that are not in it for the right reasons, who like genuinely take an interest in their people.
Yeah.
And those people that work for those kinds, I feel badly for, because you are ultimately not being taught such critical things that I just think are going to hurt those people long term in their careers.
Yeah. So how do you address that with your team? Like your team today, you got like super experienced people, fairly junior, somewhere in the middle, a mixed bag. What do you have
Mixed,
with you?
mixed bag. We are going to be scaling up. Some headcount. Iterable, just to get into that a bit. So, right, we're a marketing automation platform, but that we're fully omni-channel. So our sweet spot is B2C brands. So like think Redfin, MLB, NHL. It's an enterprise sale, right? I mean,
Yeah.
these are 6-figure, sometimes 7-figure deals. It's extremely complex. Attention to detail, just you have to have it. Like
Yeah.
it's not even when I interview, I'm like, And you know, man, just from doing it as long as we have, it's like you can tell when someone, and you can ask certain questions that show someone's attention to detail versus someone who like just tries to maybe almost get to the deal, which that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your question though, it's a mixed bag. Uh, I have been at Iterable under a year. I've not yet made a hire, so I inherited a team.
Okay.
I will be hiring, and I'm so excited for that. And this is something like my boss and I have been talking about because I just look forward now that I've learned a lot here and how we tick and internally how we operate and being parts of deals, wins, losses. Um, I'm excited to bring someone in. But yeah, as far as experience, like I want to bring someone in who has true enterprise experience, who has a successful track record. I can't afford a risk. And I've done transactional too myself. I've done transactional, mid-market, and enterprise. So I know the scope. Um, it's definitely more complex. Like it's hard, man. It's a hard
Yeah.
sale.
Which means you're dealing mostly with senior people, right? Especially inheriting a team. They've been in the game for a while. Uh, how do you get beyond just a pipe review or a deal review to get, you mentioned the fundamentals. How do you work with a senior AE enterprise who's been doing it for a while at the company longer than you have, and you're going to go beyond the deal review and say, okay, how can we do better on the next one? How do you get to that?
It's a really good question. I like to keep it simple. Like you'll see, that's just a theme. I'll probably say that too many times in this podcast. No matter who you are. So one thing, I look for companies and people that have growth mindsets. Iterable has 4 values. One of those is growth mindset. So I think we do a good job of hiring those kinds of people. And I fortunately inherited a team that has that. If you have a true growth mindset, that means that you are always looking to get better. So for me, I always say to my team, it's as simple as this. I'm not saying I'm better than you. I'm more talented than you. I know more than you. I just know that a big piece of my job is studying how you are as a seller, whether that's live and an in-person, right? I've had several of those at this point, whether it's listening to gong calls, whether it's how you speak internally, presenting your QBRs. You have someone who, whether you like it or not, is obsessed with attention to detail because I care about you, who's going to not just give you constructive feedback, also recognize the positives. But I think it's just being open, man. I always say to my sellers, like any good relationship, any great company, one which we were a part of, right? There should be a healthy amount of constructive tension.
Yeah.
So if I'm not getting pushback from a rep, I'll call it out. It's like, you haven't given me any feedback. Like, how am I pissing you off? What am
Yeah.
I doing that's bothering you lately? Because I know I can be a huge pain in your ass.
Yeah.
So I just like to strip aside all the BS and be a human being. And like, as you know, man, you spend a ton of time with coworkers more than you do generally with your family and friends. It's kind of crazy. So,
Yeah.
hey, if we're doing this, let's do this. That's kind of my approach, I guess.
Yeah. I've often asked the kind of reps that they would want to coach if they were a manager. Like if we had to put a team with you, what would you want? Who do you want on that team?
Awesome
And
question.
how would you lead it? Just to try to build some of that empathy. If you don't have it already, it sounds like you guys are hiring based on some really, really strong core competencies. But I've always liked to ask the question to turn it around and just like, hey, let's build this out together. And you diagram it, you tell me how this should go. Let's start there. Um,
It's
yeah,
a really good point, man. And
yeah,
I think, right, to your point, I've inherited a team. One of the things I did do, because now I started in March. So going back to that, I did send out, I kind of have this like, I don't want to drop the word survey. That sounds crappy. Let's call it a questionnaire. And it basically does ask them those questions, right? It's like, hey, we don't know each other yet. I don't expect you to trust me right away.
yeah,
Right. But I do want to get to know you and it's genuine. So I'm going to send you a survey, fill it out. And it's just basically asking them, what have you loved from prior leaders? What have you disliked from prior leaders and why? How do you like to receive feedback? Um, Whatever, just getting a kind of, and I like doing it on paper because it does allow them to off camera, off Zoom, just sit there and actually put some thought into it. And I
yeah,
just think that helps you get a lot more real answers out of it.
yeah. I used to do this every 6 months. I used to send a survey monkey out. I'll call it a survey. And it was really simple. What should I start doing? What should I stop doing? What should I keep doing? And most people would just kind of brush it off a little bit, not get a lot of juicy stuff. And then once, and it was anonymous. So I want to keep it like, hey, if you want to put your name, just write your name on one of the answers. Cool. If you don't, I don't care. And one of the anonymous ones was, you like joke around a lot during the day. Nothing offensive, nothing that, but it makes me feel like the job isn't as serious as it could be. I was like, fuck, because I used to like to keep it light because we were pretty intense with numbers, chasing things down, always having incentives, go, 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 doing a lot of trainings. And my thought process was, okay, if I could balance that out with just some being light, and it's kind of my personality anyway, I can be a clown sometimes. But not hearing that and not knowing it, that's what the thought process was going on. And then I asked other people who I trusted directly. I'm like, hey, let me ask you something real quick. They're like, oh yeah, yeah, I could have told you that. I'm like, why didn't you fucking tell me that then, bro?
Yeah, feedback's important. It's so easy to have blinders on or assume that things are going well and everyone's liking how you're operating as a leader. And I mean, even Halligan, right? Going back to this like HubSpot, I know I've listened to him on several podcasts. And fortunately, he's a guy I'm still in touch with to a capacity, right? It's like I'm talking
Yeah,
about once in a while. We'll chat. We jumped on a Zoom earlier this year, but I thought he put it really, really well. It's it's just being vulnerable. Like I don't want to know the things I'm doing really well. I mean, I do to make sure I keep doing them, right? But it's his
yeah,
perspective was more, tell me the things I'm doing badly and don't be shy. Like I'm not perfect, right? And I think yeah, you and I are similar in that mind. We like to lead with like a obviously we like to perform and we've always had high performing teams and all that stuff, but I think you and I also like to bring an element of kind of clowning around at times. And you're right. I think to certain people that might be great. Others might be like, all right, can we be a bit more serious? So yeah, I think it's important you keep a pulse on
yeah.
yourself.
And now you've you've taken a sample from some pretty early stage, you know, entrepreneurial, got to build everything all the way to publicly traded big fish. Like, what do you see as some of the job itself, leading salespeople, teaching them the fundamentals, dumping into deals? Like, a lot of that doesn't change. What do you see as the biggest differences having experienced both? And then most recently, I mean, you saw both ends of that just in the last year, 18 months.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? HubSpot was an incredible run. Uh, as everyone knows it, right? So I was there from 13 through 19. And then did the classic VP of sales role after. And I truly can say I don't regret it. However, I also don't mind admitting I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
And um, I learned stuff that I would have never learned had I stayed at HubSpot. So you go from running a team at a machine, right? And of course, we were part of like, we saw that build. I mean, I joined around 300, whatever, like we saw it really scale and change. But then you go to a company that's 50, or maybe I think it was even 40, and you're reporting to a CEO, right? And you are the guy. And I did that 3 times, right? I did that 3 times, I think 5 years. So one of them was successful. One COVID hit and there was big layoffs, which included myself. And another was not a fit between me and the CEO, right? We were just button heads and for right or for wrong, we had differences of opinion that I felt didn't allow me to be the person he hired me to be, and he felt otherwise. So I think but through that, this getting into the job, look, you have a board that you are reporting to as an executive. I fundraised, right? Like I literally pitched in front of investors with the C-suite. I,
Just another sale, by the way. Just another sale. That's
another
all it
sales.
is.
Like I love the uncomfortable as I think about why sales has been such a great career for me. I love it. Like I
Yeah.
love, love, love getting myself into something that I'm like, I don't know what's
Yeah.
gonna happen, and I think to be really successful and have a long career in sales, I believe personally that whether you know it or not, you have to be someone who's okay with that discomfort, you know?
Yeah. And bad fit to a certain degree. Like you mentioned, hey, you didn't have a good fit with the CEO. Other time, business failed because of COVID. That's just product no longer fit the market, right? Like I remember. my first gig was a B2C biotech sale. So it was selling umbilical cord blood preservation services
Wow.
to expectant families, right? Loved it, crushed it, one of the top reps. I'm like, I found my home. I'm a sales guy. This is it. Next job was account management, B2B in this very commoditized space, completely different. I absolutely sucked at it. I was horrible, 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 horrible. Next job after that, B2C, small business, very much kind of transactional SaaS, right back home. Yep. And then from there went to HubSpot. I was like, it's like figuring shit out sometimes. You're not necessarily good at sales or bad at sales. You got to find that fit. There's a
And there is
certain
a fit. You're right. You're right.
yeah,
And yeah, to your point, like I like taking risk, right? Like on those personality tests, I'm always someone who's like big risk taker, right? So whether it's involved in crypto, right? Like I'm a crypto person. Like I took the risk and
of course you
whatever.
do.
So I like that stuff. I think to your point, even though I did think I was more ready than I was when I left HubSpot, right?
Yeah.
And then you get into the role and I was like, oh shit, like I literally have to do everything for revenue. Like I am the revenue guy. And I wasn't, I have too much more to learn, right? I'm not afraid to admit that. And you know me, man. I've always been someone who like I want to enjoy my work. It's work, but like we all have bad days. But overall, I want to wake up and be excited for what I'm doing. So to go back to your question, like through all of what I was doing, through those startup gigs as a VP of sales 3 times over, one being a big success. I brought the company from sub 10 to sub 20. So we doubled revenue. That was purely under my leadership. That's, one thing I will give myself some credit for is really hard. Built a team from I started with, there was like 10, got rid of half the team. There was 5, grew it up to like 35, had a BDR director, 2 or 3 sales leaders under me. It was the most real org that I saw myself build from day one. Of course, with my leaders being really impactful in helping get that going, a good CEO, so on and so forth. But that was cool. I learned a lot through that. That I what to get back to like what I feel has helped me there as I transition to back to a bit of a growth company again, like with Iterable. I've become such a better operator,
Yeah.
and I think you hear that as a younger seller and you're like, what does that even mean? Like, why are these guys always looking at spreadsheets? Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And you actually learn sales is truly an art and a science.
Yeah.
And, it depends on your sale. I think if you're in an SMB sale, the science is more important. Like you actually just have to figure out, I need to run this many demos or I will not hit my number. In an
Yeah.
enterprise sale, the science is still important, which is where I'm at. However, the art, I think, is more important because if you can't execute on a call with a VP of marketing from a 1,000 employee business at a brand like Fabletics, for example, like, and I wasn't involved in that deal, but they're one of our customers. You're just, it doesn't matter about your metrics. Like you have to show someone who's running a huge, big, successful marketing org with massive goals that you understand their world.
Yeah.
So um, all that to be said, I think it's helped me. Like I'm really happy to be back here. I want a shot at another exit, right? So Iterable's private. Having gone through an exit with HubSpot, I'd love to do that again. Tried it with the early stage and realized like I saw myself not having as much fun with the job and being more stressed and feeling like it was just, I mean, man, just crazy hours and like just no work-life balance and stuff. So Iterable has been great because it's allowed me to I'm back involved in deals more than I have since leaving HubSpot. So it's also showed me like kind of dusted off the cobwebs a bit in certain areas where I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
I kind of forgot some of these little things with selling, but I'm coaching a team. But I'm involved in deals. Still working with the leadership team. It's just a lot more to your point, man, like my fit.
Yeah. How close are you? This is something that I struggle with all the time. If you had to grade your sales ability when you jump on a call to you when you were at your best, selling full time, that's all you did, AE, all day, every day, at your absolute best, scale of 1 to 10, how close are you to that guy when you jump on a call?
It's a really good question. I'm thinking because honestly, like where my brain went was when I was in it every day as a seller. I'm not afraid to admit I was damn good, and but it's because I also loved it. Like I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. So it wasn't like I was just selling to sell. I enjoyed working with customers to try to identify what the hell is going on in your world and can I help you? You know.
Yeah.
So I would say though, but at the same time, like today, I would say I'm a 7 compared to the peak when I was a seller.
Yeah.
But I will say the moments that I'm needed most in deals, I'm much further along than when I was as a seller. So my ability to firm up negotiation and next steps, understand the paper trail of exactly what has to happen from this call till signature and who's involved. Like I think those quote unquote tough questions as a leader, those just become easy. Like that's my
Yeah.
job. So I think as a seller, I was really good and better than I am today at being able to manufacture a deal to a late stage of like one put over the finish line. But I think today I'm much better at being able to get that deal over the finish line once an AE has it there and has to tag me in for some help. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Um, how much time do you have today, by the way?
Are we doing a Rogan style? We're just gonna go for 3 hours?
No, we'll go. I mean, I'll clear it out.
No, I got a 10 a.m. meeting.
All right. We'll get you out of here in time. Because I keep coming back with this. I'm sorry, and I got to teach these people that I bring in the best practices, and we run a company that focuses on optimizing sales fundamentals. So the bar is already set in terms of expectations to be really, really high, and innately my natural sales ability is not very strong. Like I was never one of those guys that could be dropped in and was like, I don't need to prepare, I'm good, put me on the phones. I've seen that. I've worked with people like that. It's like you're a fucking freak. I don't know where you come from. How do you just say that and have it sound so good when you're on a call? I could never do that. So I always got my success by being very focused on those fundamentals. You're like, all right, I got to prepare. I got to know I got to get out of this call. I'm sharp. I'm practiced. It's front of mind. For that stuff, I'm like a 5 based on scale of 10 with when I was at my absolute peak. Because when I was locked in doing it every day, it was just like an automatic checklist in my mind. I'm like, and I would be my saving grace was I was shameless. I didn't give a fuck if somebody got off the phone, they didn't like me, whatever. It's like, we're gonna get this shit done or we won't. Part of the reason why I'm not naturally that great at sales is because I'm generally, unlikable in a lot of ways that I communicate, and that's fine. I'm cool with that, but we're gonna solve some shit here. We're gonna get some stuff done, or we won't, and we'll move on from it. And when I'm locked in like that, I'm great. Now I'm probably fine. And my reps will call me out on like, you talk a big game about getting quantitative business impact. Where are the numbers, bro? So like, yeah, I missed it. I didn't get it.
But at the same time, man, like, and I'm not just trying to have your back. I think it'd be strange if you were where you were as a seller. Like,
It's
if
like,
anyone came on your podcast and said, I'm a 10 out of 10, I'd challenge the hell out of
yeah,
you. Right? Because when you're not doing it every day, how could you be at the same level you were when you were doing it? It's like anything. If I don't swing a golf
yeah,
for 6 months versus swinging it every day, where am I going to be better?
exactly right. Yep, it's a muscle. It's like anything else. You got to. I hear about people who like play musical instruments and say the same things. Like, I played this instrument for years. I got away from it for 6 months. I couldn't figure it out. I needed like weeks of playing every day to just get back to where I was. Like, yeah, makes sense.
It's like anything in life. And by the way, the fundamentals I know is a big theme of your business. And I'm a big fan of that. I think, yeah, like it's everything else we've talked about so far, none of it matters unless you are someone who's maniacally prepared. If you are
Yeah,
someone who is diligent with follow-up, if you are someone who understands the importance of team selling, getting others' perspective, having mentorship, uh, knowing that no matter how advanced technology gets and how cool your product is and how flashy some features are that your product team is harping down your throats, if you don't run a good discovery call, right? And again, it varies. Like I'm in an enterprise sale, you have to do great discovery.
yeah,
And because every single deal that Iterable is in, literally every single one is competitive. There is not a single deal that just says, we're just looking at you. They're
Yeah.
looking at least 3 vendors 100% of the time. So why I love that, and I tell my team this, they're buying something. They are going to buy something. So you are walking into a situation that either you found, we don't get a lot of inbound, right? The BDR booked once in a while on inbound, but you are in now conversations where you've either created an active project or there is an active project. So your ability as a seller is going to be what wins or loses this deal. And you just have to be okay with owning that.
Yeah.
Like, you got to look yourself in the mirror. This is not if you tell me we lost the deal because our interface and our journey builder wasn't as good as the other competitors, like BS. No, that's not why you lost the deal.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fundamental too. Like, there's that book Extreme Ownership that I read years ago, and I would highly recommend it to anyone, even if you're a seller. I just think it teaches you, and it's a little intense because they kind of make some analogies of war, right? But at the same time, I think it does teach you the importance of as a human being, like you are in control and therefore responsible for your actions.
Yeah, the sphere of influence that you have. I love that book. It's one of my favorites. Is like you have to color everything with what could I have done differently to have a better outcome, right? What is within my control? And when you really ask yourself that question and open it up, it's a ton. There's so many things that you go back to. You're never going to get to the non-controllable stuff, but that's what keeps you at the cutting edge. That's what keeps your skills sharp. That's what keeps you playing at the highest level because you're always looking to maximize that part of your game and not thinking, yeah, it's the economy, it's the holidays coming up, it's budget. Like, okay, I got it. I got the whole list of shit I can't control. The stuff I can, I'm never going to exhaust that list. I'm never going to have everything checked off and be good with everything. And if you approach it that way, I mean, that's the real difference between people who are in the same system with the same product, the same leads, selling twice as much as the average. They're just better at certain things and their head's more in the game. They're more prepared. They execute on certain things better. They get more creative. To your point, the art of it. If there's anything I am better at today than I was when I was at my peak, it's the creative thinking. It's all right, we have to just construct this deal a little differently. We can move this and around. We'll kick that out. Okay, great, done. And just broadly think, how do we solve the problem with a full menu? Let's put everything on the menu and figure out how do we figure this out and piece it together.
So if I had to summarize that, dude, it's like adaptability, right? And this just reminded me of something months ago when this Harvard Business Review thing, the magazines there. There was an article that came out that talked about, is there a sales gene? And ultimately, through some research, I don't remember the stats. When you post this, I can like comment on the article or on the post or whatever. But it was basically an article that said there is a sales gene. It had some science behind it, and it was adaptability. And I thought about it. I was like, wow, that's so true. Like, I thinking about the best sellers I've known, and like, dude, you're in that. Like, you are someone who can be thrown into something and you'll figure it out, right? Doesn't mean you'll win it, but like, you'll be able to navigate that situation. I'm the same way. And when I thought about the best sellers, like in that I've worked with or just know, they all have that.
Yeah.
And honestly, it made me realize, like, wow, if you're not adaptable, and I see this, like I've seen this with certain reps, man. They again, they're like, this is our process. I'm just following our process. And process is great and frameworks are great. But if you can't adapt at certain moments within that, you're not going to win deals. Like,
Yeah.
you're not, is you can again, prep is so important, right? Same thing. We do at Iterable, we take it to a different extent in our segment where for a discovery call, because we're not high volume, we're not doing 20 discos a month. It's much less.
Yeah.
So our discos have to be, we just have to be obsessive with who we're talking to, what's their role, what's their LinkedIn, what connections do we have, what's the recent news, and like making notes of it. What's our point of view, what we call our POV, that we're like our synopsis ahead of talking to them. So we have some to drive the conversation a certain direction should it not be going. Looking at their website, looking at their built with, what's their tech stack, going as far as trying to check if these people we're talking to had prior experience with Iterable at past companies. Like, again, man, just And I'm just riffing with you, but this is like what our team is doing and has to. And we jump on a call to prep ahead of the discos. So the manager and the rep will run through a doc that we have a template for and literally
Yeah.
go through it together. And the goal is not at all to make sure the AE is doing it right. It's to make sure, is there anything that we're missing? Or like, what might I see that you didn't?
Yeah.
And I say that to you because that goes back to adaptability. But at the same time, that call that you have, you're like, this is great. I have the best point of view. I'm so fired up. They used Iterable
Yeah.
in their last company. This is going to be great, Steve. And they jump on, and all of a sudden, someone who wasn't on the invite jumps on. I'm a consultant, and hey, I use Braze. That's one of our big competitors. They're good.
Yeah.
Braze is good, by the way. And I love Braze. So you got to tell me, why should I be talking Iterable? And if you don't in that moment have the ability to quickly realize, okay, this is going a different direction. Let me
Yeah.
pause and let me be ready to have this conversation. And you're someone who can't do that. I just think you're not going to be successful long term in sales, and you're not going to enjoy the career.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be ready to pivot, and that ability to formulate an opinion, a point of view. Uh, it's not so much what's said, it resonates with trust. Like people say, okay, I can have a little bit more trust now with this person. We'll see where this goes because they seem like they know their shit. They have a point of view. Maybe it's going to be the best thing, maybe not for us, but they know where they're coming from. And they're not just telling me something I want to hear and trying to fill the gap or whatever. They are coming from a real place and they've been there before. And that trust that it brings to the conversation is really, it keeps it going, especially in enterprise sales. You lose as soon as you break the trust, and then everything else, you're spinning your wheels trying to fight to get it back. It's really hard to get that back.
Totally, man. And I think one of the interview questions I like to ask sellers is, tell me about a time recently you were really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'll just hit it straight on. And it's so cool, man. I've had some awesome answers. I've had people that I can tell were just like so uncomfortable with me asking that, in which they didn't know how to answer it, which for me, that's a yellow flag because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's all good. Like it's, I'm not saying you
Yeah.
have to do something inappropriate, but like just want to know when you were uncomfortable with something professionally, personally, that you're comfortable sharing. And then it's like, how do you react? What was the outcome? And again, man, fundamentals, like I know that's a big theme for your company. And I love that because no matter, like, for example, I use ChatGPT every single day of my life, personally and professionally. Literally, it's a shortcut on my iPhone on the top, right? Like I'm a power user, and I still get fear that while it's powerful, if you don't have the fundamentals rooted in you as a seller and you don't have a good leader, and I go back to younger people, by the way, like this is all towards earlier people in their careers. I'm just so nervous that they are just going to always be like, here's a website, ChatGPT. Here's an email to write me an email to the VP of marketing. And they're like literally copy pasting. And then the results aren't there. And they're like, but I'm doing everything that, I'm hitting my activity metrics. I'm doing all this stuff. Why am I not winning? And it's like, well, there's a big art to this too that, I think, Matt, it's like you can only coach so much too. Like the person has to be able to perform.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they have to retain what you teach them and be able to apply it on calls without you. At HubSpot, we had the term super repping. Like I'm guilty of it. And frankly, at times I still am guilty of it,
Yeah.
but I think you learn that you can't super rep. It's not going to build you a machine. One of the best teams I've ever had still performance wise was early on in my leadership career at HubSpot. And I still think about what was different about that team, and it was inexperienced sellers, but we just did a really good job of embracing the fact that we all have a lot of room to grow, and let's be okay with that. And we're going to fuck up at times and make mistakes, and that's all good. But like the biggest thing I try to drive home is we have to be okay with assessing what happened, what went wrong, what could I learn from it, and how am I going to retain it and apply it moving forward.
Yeah.
That's what builds kind of this just machine where each quarter that goes by or month, or depending on what business you're in, you just start seeing that. And I don't want to say it's not like the leader's not doing anything, but you're much more just like, this is cool. Like my team's crushing it,
Yeah.
but that takes so much investment from a leader to get to that point.
Yeah. And to what you were mentioning earlier with process, I had a great conversation with one of my sales managers years ago saying, hey, you know what? We got this process, it's working, but I have A players on the team that don't follow it to the letter. And I'm wondering if they're setting a bad example. And the conversation we ended up going into was that the process is not there to build A players really. It's not to put a ceiling in, it's to put a floor in. And you need to have process to make sure you have everything buttoned up that you can control. And then the creative thinking and the adaptability and the art behind the science, that's really where it takes a B player to an A. They got the process stuff, they know when to pull in those fundamentals, but then they know when to jump out of the playbook and say, okay, I got to go in a different direction on this because this is a unique conversation with a unique person, unique situation that doesn't exactly fit that very linear, regimented playbook.
And again, it's like to your point, finding your fit. If you are someone who needs that rigidness in process, like transactional selling, right? And that's okay. It's
Yeah.
great. You can make a great career out of that.
Yep.
I think so many people have this like, oh, enterprise sales is like it's better or it's not. It's just it's different, you know. So I think yeah, you're right. Sellers have to be okay with figuring out what are they naturally good at, and frankly, what do they thrive off of, right? I always go back to it's probably more true in enterprise sales, and that's not a knock on SMB. I've done it. I think there has to be genuine care and passion for what you sell. Like I literally think Iterable's product is the coolest thing in the world, right? And that's why I work here. I think it's incredible. I love that we are helping massive brands that we all know as consumers and use every day of our lives, like Redfin, for example. I use a lot. I just like real estate, right? It's not like I don't have an empire by any means. I have one rental property, but I just like checking, what's out there in the market. And they use Iterable for everything, in
Yeah.
their case study. So I can say that they're like, everything SMS, they're pushed through their app. And I just think like, for me, that's so cool. Like we are literally shaping the way apps and software and brands that we all shop and use every day are engaging with their customers. So all that to be said, I think for sellers, if you take a job because of pay and you are like product's okay, but look at this base,
Yeah.
not going to be successful long term. You might have a decent year, but like ultimately you're either going to burn out or you're going to fail because the one thing I think the pandemic's done, and I'm curious to get your take, since the pandemic, I think people more than ever don't want to be sold to.
Yeah. I mean, I found it hard. Well, yeah, we saw what happened, right? We saw this explosion in SaaS funding during the pandemic. Everybody got money for everything. It flooded the chamber with outreach and it exhausted people. So everyone was living remote, digital, on their phones, on their computers, and everyone was going after them there. So just the sheer volume of what people were getting hit with was overwhelming, which is going to lead us into a demand gen conversation here because it's getting pretty chippy out there these days. But I 100% agree with you. It's we kind of were together living into the inbound world
Yep.
where everything was going away from outbound interruption into inbound. We were there during that great, beautiful golden era of inbound growth, and then inbound sales from there. And we had these generations that came through that. And now we're in this weird place where I feel it's transitioning again. As we get into 2025, I'd love your take on it, but especially from the demand gen piece into the how do you actually work through these conversations? It's a weird place that we're getting into right now. And it's generational because there's a whole new generation that's coming up where they grew up texting, not talking. They grew up on apps, not in bars. They drink less, they talk less, they drive less, they party less. It's like all of this stuff gets put together, but they know the digital landscape much better. It's a
Yeah,
weird place we're getting into, man.
I agree. Life is cyclical, right? Like whether it's a fashion trend, like flare jeans made a comeback. What was it, like 10 years ago or something, right? Like for women, I remember that. Like that's funny because I remember growing up and like as a kid with my older sister wearing flare jeans, and like here we are, we're back. Why I say this, like, where is he going with this? Uh, I believe that as we think about selling, as we step into next year, the fundamentals are more important than they've ever been, really. And it's because you have people, to your point, man, everyone's blasted. Everyone's using outreach, sales loft, HubSpot to just, get stuff out there. And They should, by the way. I'm not saying they shouldn't be. Um, but I'm thinking about what are some unique things people can do. Video prospecting is still something I think is underutilized. Uh,
Yep.
Connecting with people on LinkedIn, and when you see that they're on the chat, a little creepy, but the green bubble pops up, say hi, right? Like
Yep.
I think you have to find ways to differentiate more than ever. Uh, but again, I think it goes back to sellers. Like you're right, this younger generation is so technologically advanced to a point that it's incredible. But at the same time, the caveat that keeps me up at night with that group is like, what about the ability to connect with a human being on an emotional level and not have that prospect just feel like, again, they're being sold to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's a big difference in an engagement that comes off as, I always like to say examples like when I say to our team, like, you want these people to hang up the Zoom or the call and literally be like, I don't know if I'm buying yet, but holy shit, that was a really cool conversation. Like I
Yeah.
enjoy, I also points of like, if you're really good at selling, the impact you're going to have is like those people at night when like they're with their spouse and their kids and they're talking and stuff at the dinner table, like you'll get brought up. Like I had a really cool
Yeah.
meeting today, right? Or whatever. Here's what happened. I'm excited to learn more. Like that is, those conversations are happening every day. It's a matter of, are you the seller who's making that kind of stuff happen? Or are you a seller who just makes it all about your functionality and features and tries to skip to the finish line of a deal, not realizing that like you're talking to a human being who has real goals, initiatives, things they're trying to accomplish. And if you don't live in that world, no matter how long it takes you to, the deal is unlikely to happen.
Yeah. And with that, again, it's all based on the just the conversation. There's no tech. There's nothing, creeping in there. You think we have too much tech today in sales? Is the stack too complicated?
My inclination is yes.
Yeah.
I mean, what is, would you agree?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And
It's
most people I talk to, it's like, yep, we got this. And when you dig in, okay, how are you using that? We're using this one thing and it does like 12 things, but we're using this one thing. And then we use one thing over there. And the team doesn't even use that thing, but we have the subscription. It's like, man, it's overwhelming. And people jumping in and out of all these different things all the time. It's inefficient. It would
Yeah, I
drive me
think to your
crazy.
point, there's so much of it that there's so much tech that it's overwhelming. And again, I think back to a seller who's newer in their career, who's at their desk in their house. And I just always have this image of a man or a woman who's earlier in their career, who is just literally sitting at their desk and just like, gosh, like, what do I do today?
Yeah.
Because it's like you go into Cleary, you go into Gong, you go into Salesforce. Oh, let me go into ChatGPT. Let me check LinkedIn. Like, and again, that's where it goes back to leadership, though, man. It's like you need a leader who's going to be able to help you through their own experience. If I were you, here's where I would suggest spending your time and why. And that's not the same for every rep at your company. It's based off of what's their current pipeline, right?
Yep.
Are they well behind performance wise year to date where they have a gap to make up? Like I have some sellers who have a gap to make up. So right now it's like your number this quarter is not your quota. Your number this quarter is your gap to your annual number.
Yeah.
We're a Feb to Jan fiscal year, which by the way, I've never
Yeah.
had. Kind of sweet.
Yeah. Oh
Uh,
yeah, you don't have the holiday disruption.
And you have 2 year ends, right? Like you can lean into the urgency of getting deals done in December, yet
Yeah.
January also, because
Yeah.
it's our fiscal. But again, man, yeah, just to your point, you're so inundated with tech that it's just if you don't have good, I think enablement has become a very important piece of businesses. Like I think good enablement teams are more important than they've ever been because otherwise you just buy all this stuff as a company because you have to,
Yep.
and it's rolled out when there's passion and excitement for 30 days. And then it's just another app in Okta, right? Like
Yeah.
straight up, man. So I agree with you. And I don't know how we solve that problem. I don't know. But I think it always comes back to what we're talking about, which is like,
Yeah.
you can use all the tech in the world for efficiencies, which efficiencies are great. You still got to go back to the basics forever to be a great seller who's going to be able to have sustainable success.
Yeah. You talked about people getting into sales now and trying to get into this world. I never asked you how you got into it because none of us ever grow up thinking, I want to be a sales rep when I grow up. We kind of find our way in here. How did you
Yeah.
find your way in?
So yeah, it's a funny story. It brings me back to being a kid. So my old man was, and it still is, guy's 70 and he's got more energy than I do. It's insane. So he's been in insurance sales his whole career. Um, as I started getting like into my teenage years, I remember family, friends and stuff being like, I noticed so much of you and your father, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I always thought my dad had like a cool lifestyle. And I'm truly from like middle class, right? So when I say lifestyle, I just mean his work balance. It's whether he was going, traveling for a deal or a conference, or stopping in the house to eat lunch and then telling me he's like, I got a bunch of meetings this afternoon. And I was always like, that seems cool. Like
Yeah.
dad's always just doing different stuff. And that's exciting to me because me, I can't sit still. So for me to just get into a job where I'm an accountant. I actually minored in accounting because I was good at it, but and one of my professors tried to tell me to do accounting, and I will never forget. I was like, as thank you, and I agree I'm good at it, but like I could never do this every day. So I think where I'm going is like I saw some stuff from my dad. I knew I liked to be in different scenarios more frequently. I went to Suffolk University in Boston. That's what brought me up here from Connecticut. Studied business management, minored in accounting. I was actually pre-law my first semester.
All right.
So I had ambitions initially going to Suffolk to go pre-law, go to Suffolk Law, right? Great program, and
Yep.
become a lawyer. And there's obviously a lot of similarities between being a lawyer and being a salesperson. It's just very different. You're selling law versus, some product or service. And ultimately for me, I started getting the textbooks and I was like,
Yeah.
I like school. I like to learn. I don't like it enough to go through this for the next 8 years, you know?
Yeah.
So I had one professor who became a mentor of mine in the business school. And in my junior year, I remember this conversation. He asked me to stay after class. And he's like, Zavaski, what do you want to do? And he asked me to stay after for some presentation stuff. And then he just started talking to me about like life. And I was like, I really want to try sales in some capacity. I don't know what yet, but like, I think it's something I want to give a shot. Kind of classic. Like, I want to try sales.
Yeah.
And he was like, look, I think you'd be great at it. Go into tech. Like, that is going to be everything for the rest of your life. Like software, apps, AI. He even mentioned AI.
Yeah.
This is circa, '08. Like,
Wow.
it's really cool, right? So, he was a great mentor, really successful guy. And if he hears this, like he knows exactly who he is. So shout out to you. And I that kind of hit home with me. And then I started, I've always liked tech myself. I find it just cool, interesting. I try to stay ahead with tech personally, just like I like trying new things. Um, and so I made that decision. I literally said, you know what, I'm going to try software sales. And the worst case scenario is it doesn't work out. And again, like you kind of see, I don't mind. Like I always believe like you'll figure things out. If
Yeah.
I suck at it, I'll figure it out. So that's what led me to my first software sales gig out of college. I actually skipped the BDR thing.
Good for you.
So, but different time.
Yeah.
2010, I was doing literally 100 cold calls every day minimum. And this was on a hard phone, a Cisco phone, right? Where you're picking
Yeah.
up and they tracked your dials and they would look at BS dials.
So you would be your own BDR. You still did the job.
I
You were
did a
just doing it
BDR.
for
I
yourself.
wasn't AE, but I was doing my own BDR. Yeah, we
Right.
didn't have
Okay.
BDRs.
Yeah. Because it's a precious skill. It's
Yeah.
priceless to have that journey to go through in early days.
Yeah. So that's and then obviously, led me to the HubSpot ultimately, where the great run. And then
Yeah.
like I said, bounced around a few different startups for the last 5 years and really, really digging life at Iterable right now.
Very good. Make more money as a rep or a manager?
I think it depends. I think if you're an SMB, you'll make more as a leader.
Hmm.
I think if you're an enterprise, you'll make more as a rep.
Yeah.
Like we have reps that have cleared 7 figures,
Wow.
multiple years in a row. Um, that's cool, right? And these
Yeah.
are these are these are men and women who have families who are much later on in their career. and just are damn good at it, love the autonomy it brings, fundamentals are there, right?
Yep.
And they understand how lucrative it can be. So
Yeah,
they're
man.
closing only a few deals a year. Those are the strategic accounts, but you're able to do that. You're clearing, you're making a mill. I mean, it's pretty sweet that tech gives people that opportunity.
Very good. And you're hiring right now, right?
We are hiring. Yeah. So there's I'm in mid market. Um, I will caveat that by saying I think how a lot of companies define mid market is different. Mid market here is more of an enterprise sale.
Yeah.
Like these are all six-figure deals. You're talking to at least two departments, C levels. You got to get involved in these deals. We were just looking at some win rate stuff. Like we know if we don't have four contacts involved in a deal consistently, that our win rate is astronomically lower than when we do. So, anyways, we are hiring. I'm personally hiring. So, in an off chance that someone who sees this likes this and thinks I might be cool to talk to and work with, on a serious note, I'd love to. But yeah, we are hiring across the board. There's all sorts of recs and product and gearing up for a big 2025.
All right, my man. Hey, we just did an hour. How was
Yeah.
that?
And we'll say it went by fast.
We did. It was a lot of fun.
Let's
Feel
grab a
good,
beer
man.
soon. I'd
Let's
love to
do
catch
it.
up, man.
Definitely. I think we could do another couple hours here. So we're gonna have to run this back again. This was great.
I'm down to do a part two.
All right, brother. Great to see you.
Good seeing you too, Matt.
All right.
All
Take
right.
care.
Later, man.